Insperity presents the Small Business Advocate Show with Jim Blasingame, brought to you by FedEx, CareerBuilder.com, and Palo Alto Software. This is a copyrighted production of Small Business Network, Inc., all rights reserved.
Welcome back. It's 12 after the hour. Thank you very much for joining me. Thanks for hanging out with me. I'm Jim Blasingame, and you're listening to the Small Business Advocate Show, and I'm glad you're here. Kurt Badenhausen's here, too, ladies and gentlemen. He's a good friend of ours. He's a senior editor with the great Forbes organization, and he's here to tell us about some of America's best small companies. Kurt, welcome back to the show.
Morning. Thanks for having me on, Jim.
It's good to have you back. I got at least the top 10 of your list here in front of me, Kurt, and tell the audience what this list is all about.
Well, we've been going through some interesting economic times, and what we're trying to do is identify companies that are still in the growth phase of their life. And so what we start with is our companies. These are all public companies, so maybe not traditionally small companies that people consider with 10 to 50 employees. These are publicly traded companies that we deem to be small companies, so that means less than $1 billion in sales. We weed out any companies that are thinly traded or that have any sort of accounting or legal issues hanging over their head.
Right.
And so what we do then...
When you say thinly traded, you're talking about penny stocks?
Well, not necessarily penny stocks, but to some degree, this is an investor's list. We don't want you to get into a stock that you're not going to be able to unload. So
right.
A company that only trades 500,000 shares a day, we wipe them clean. We basically require companies to have.
That's not what I call thinly traded, but that's pretty. Those are pretty high. I call thinly traded zero.
Yeah. We put a cutoff around 10,000 shares.
But what is the general? All right, so that's how we decide how they get on the list. But what are the criteria from a performance standpoint?
So then, in terms of ranking the companies, what we do is look at three main areas. We look at sales growth, earnings growth, as well as return on equity, and we look at over the past year as well as the last 5 years. The last area that we look at is the stock performance. The market, sets the tone to some degree in terms of how these guys are doing. And so we look at how, over the last 12 months, how the stock has performed compared to its peers in its industry.
So basically, a large part of your criteria is the stock performance, which to me being a real cynic about Wall Street, Kurt, might not have anything to do with the performance of the company, right?
Absolutely.
I remember when 3 or 4 years ago, Google made more money than any company had ever made in the history of the galaxy. But they missed what the analyst said by 1 penny, and their stock went down. So don't talk to me about share price performance.
Well, I couldn't agree more. There's a big difference between being a good stock and a good company.
Yeah, thank you.
So it is not, again, it's 1/7 of the picture. The focus is on earnings, sales growth, as well as return on equity, stock performance. One piece of the pie in terms of what we're looking at here.
Right. Okay. And so Questcor Pharmaceuticals, only $143 million in sales. That's a small publicly traded company.
Yeah, that's what we're looking at here. These are, these are all less than $1 billion.
That's not much sales, and there's a whole lot of private companies that sell a lot more than that are private right these days,
Absolutely.
right? Absolutely. So what did you like about these guys? They're number one.
Questcor is an interesting company. They're a small company, but they've been around, for a few decades now. And what's incredible is basically they market one product. They have one drug.
They stick to their knitting, don't they?
Absolutely.
What is that drug?
It's a drug called Acthar, and it's been used. It was approved back in 1952, and it's been used to fight all sorts of conditions over the years, respiratory diseases, multiple sclerosis, rheumatoid.
How have they been able to stay viable all this time with one drug?
It is incredible.
I mean,
right
even
now,
McDonald's couldn't thrive with just a hamburger, right?
Absolutely. Well, what they found is, what a lot of these drug companies do is they find new uses.
Haven't they lost their patents on that drug? I mean, how could it not have become generic by now?
Well, what a lot of these drugs do, they find new uses and they can patent it, for the use of that drug.
Right.
And
this is a unique story, isn't it? I mean, a company that's ridden one horse that long. I don't know if I remember. Coca-Cola maybe is the closest thing I can think of to that.
Right. And right now what has happened is, right now it's in the last few years it's been made usually to treat multiple sclerosis. Right. Last year the FDA approved the drug though to treat infantile spasms, which gave it a boost. And they're also talking about right now getting approval to use it to treat lupus. So they're continuing to kind of expand, in another generation of diseases that they can use the drug for, and they've had remarkable growth over the last few years.
Very interesting, folks.
Return on return on equity over the last 12 months, 36%.
Right.
Sales earnings have been averaging 36%.
One thing about it is they got to be they're good at what they do, and this is a lesson for small business owners, Kurt, because I tell small business owners you really need to find out what it is that you're good at, and do that, and focus on that, and don't go. Small business owners can't wander around with the shiny object syndrome. They can't go wandering off. They got to find out what they're good at, what they enjoy, what they love doing. And kind of wallow out a niche in that area and stick with it. What do you think?
I think that couldn't be more true. I mean, there's some business, if your business is faltering, you have to figure out new areas to move in. But if you can master one area, well, people will pay for that. Right. And whether it's a product or a service that you offer, if you do one thing well, that can be enough to sustain a business, right. And these guys are proof of that.
Well, and see, I've said many times that in the 21st century, it's okay to fall in love with what you do, in this case, make one drug, but you can't fall in love with how you do it, which is what they've done, too, by repurposing this drug more than one way.
Absolutely. You have to continue moving forward in your business,
right.
And that doesn't always mean introducing new products, but whether it's a new process or looking at things
right.
from a different perspective to continue the business moving forward.
Tell us how they can find the list on your website.
You can go to Forbes.com, and you should be able to find it there. It's Forbes.com/best small companies if you want to go to the specific list, and we got all sorts of investment, growth stories.
Check it out there, folks. 20 after, right back with Kurt Badenhausen. Stay with me.
Insperity presents the Small Business Advocate Show with Jim Blasingame, brought to you by FedEx, CareerBuilder.com, and Palo Alto Software. This is a copyrighted production of Small Business Network, Inc., intended for the private use of our audience. Except as otherwise provided by copyright law, all other copying, redistribution, or publication without prior written consent is prohibited. All rights reserved.